Okay, I'm going to start with a piece of Canson Bristol board. This particular piece measures 8 inches by 10 inches, and what I've done is I've gone ahead and cut the board down the middle, so I've got two pieces that measure 5 inches across, and then instead of leaving it at 5 by 8, which looked a little awkward, I went ahead and cut off 1 inch so that both of my pieces now measure 5 inches by 7 inches. I always like to prime my pieces with white gesso because it not only seals the chipboard, but by doing that allows you to use less paint. I'm going to apply some light molding paste through a Tim Holtz mini stencil. I'm using the cracked portion, and I've placed my board side by side so that when I add the design through the stencil, they will look like they match and are meant to be together. I also found that I got smoother results by using a plain old credit card to apply the paste. Okay, while my background pieces are drying, I went ahead and die cut some chipboard. The first one is the Tim Holtz Easter Elements die. So I cut out one bunny, a bow, and I did 2 butterflies. And then I also cut out 2 frames from the Tim Holtz Vintage Cabinet card, but I used the rectangular mover and shaper to cut out the opening for this particular piece, and I did 2 of each for each of my illustration boards. So let's get started on those. I'm going to begin with the 2 larger frame pieces. And I'm using the DecoArt Media White Crackle paint, applying it randomly in thicker and thinner areas. The thinner areas will give smaller cracks, while the thicker areas will give you larger cracks. Set them both aside to air dry for best results. I covered my die cut bunny with the graphite texture paste. And then I used the spatula with a dabbing motion to give it a texture that appeared more like hair. I used a paper piercing tool to draw in a few details, such as the line between the ears, a little area for the eyes, the nose, and the bunny's tail, as well as his hind leg. And then I'm just flattening out any areas that looked raised from the movement of the paste. I'm going to add some brick texture, once again with the golden light molding paste and the Tim Holtz stencil with the brick side this time. And I'm simply applying it the same as before through the stencil with the credit card to smooth it out. I wanted to align some of the elements that I'm using on the background pieces, and so I got a ruler that has some pretty good vertical and horizontal lines on it, and I lined it up at the 1/2 inch mark along the bottom edge of the 2 boards so that I could align the 2 frames. And I'm using the golden extra heavy gel to adhere everything down. I'm going to do a little experiment. I'm going to mix some primary elements, Sunset Glow, with golden retarder, and I'm just putting it on a palette and mixing it together with a toothpick. This is one of ColourArte's newest shaker jars for their powdered pigments. These jars make it so easy to use the pigment powders and makes it so much easier to control where you place the powder, whether it's directly onto your project or into a puddle of medium to mix colors. Now I am simply picking up the Sunset Glow powder with a toothpick and sprinkling it around the perimeter to darken the background a bit. I'm using some of the retarder that I've placed on my palette, picking it up with my brush, and mixing the colors directly on the background. I will do this until I like the result. The retarder allows me plenty of time to work the paint. Next, I'm going to sprinkle some Plumeria primary elements over the background. I have a puddle of the retarder on my palette, so I can pick some of it up on my brush and then blend the colors directly onto the canvas. This time I placed a puddle of retarder onto my palette and sprinkled the Plumeria primary elements into the puddle to make a stronger color mix. I painted the brick stencil strips with this mixture, and I'm also using it to color the bunny's bow. I decided to try the dipping method to see how it will dry and how long it will take to dry. FYI, I left it overnight and it still was not dry. This may need to be taken into consideration if using retarder as your paint medium. I am mixing the teal zircon primary elements with some retarder to paint the butterfly's wings. I love the transparency of the paint with the retarder and the extra blending time it allows me. I had a bit of the paint left on my palette, and rather than waste it, I blended some of it into the outer corners of both pieces. I realized that the puddle of Plumeria that I had made earlier was still wet on my palette, so I decided to do a bit of finger painting by blending more of it into the background with, yes, of course, my fingers. I had to switch to a brush to get into the smaller areas, but no paint was wasted. Gotta love it. I made a mix of the warm gray primary elements with the retarder to paint over that graphite paste I had applied to my bunny die cut. I wanted to lighten and warm the gray color of the graphite, as well as cover up the white areas that I had made from detailing it with my paper piercing tool. Brush the crackle glaze over the butterfly wings and set aside to dry naturally for best results. I glued the bunny to the frame with golden extra heavy gel medium. I glued both butterflies down the same way. The warm gray paint was still wet on my palette as well, so I used it to paint the two butterfly bodies I had molded previously with air dry clay. I simply rolled them into a rope-like shape, which I cut in half, and then made the indentations with my paper piercing tool. After the paint dried, I simply glued them over the chipboard body with the extra heavy gel medium. I am using the Oyster Silks acrylic glaze to add highlights to my bunny. This will give some depth and dimension to him, or her. Did you know that Oyster Silks is great to use for lightening colors? I decided to make my background appear more pastel for spring, so I covered it with oyster for a beautiful pearlescent look. I soon decided to do the same thing for the inside area of the frame too. Mix the solution with the Blue Bayou primary elements to make a wash. Brush the wash over the butterfly wings to enhance the crackles in the wings, and then dab off the excess, leaving some splotchiness for color variation. This is a great way to bring out cracks in any background or area that you want to highlight. Let's get jiggy with some twinks now. I like to use a pipette to add clean water to each of my little pots. Let the twinks sit for about 5 to 10 minutes to activate them. The Dynasty Brush Company was so generous and very kind to send the design team a really nice selection of their brushes, and so far I am in love with each one I've used. They are very nice quality and a pleasure to use. This is a number 10 round brush, which will be perfect for my watercolors. I added splotches of pink crocus twinks to the background, followed by Tahitian blue and sky blue. The sky blue is a stronger color, so I spritzed with water to help the colors flow more easily, since I really just want a wash of color. I have listed the colors I am using next to each pot, so you may be able to see which colors I am using as I work the background. The next color is rose gold, followed by a very watery wash of smoky diamond. I used the heat tool to hit the wettest areas and to help them dry a bit faster, but it wasn't completely dry. I continued to go back and forth with my colors, working them around the background until I liked the effect. I wanted to add a pop of green, so I added key lime sparingly to the open, cracked areas. I wanted to darken the frame, so I added a wash of Dreamsicle H2Os. This was an afterthought, so it is not shown in the lineup of my H2O pots on the right. I have sped the video up as I continue to add colors back in where I felt it was needed. Mixed media is all about adding layers, and this is just part of that process. Now I am adding touches of rose gold twinks to the bricks in any areas I feel needed some extra warmth. Now my frame inserts look too washed out, so I brushed clear water over them first, then added a watery wash of smoky diamond twinks to make those cracks really show up. And lastly, I used the pink crocus twinks to add a touch of pink to the bunny ears and his cute little nose. Before decorating with my floral embellishments, I wanted to glue Bunny's bow around her neck and add a gemstone for her eye. In my project today, I experimented with retarder as the paint medium for the pigment powders, which is normally used to slow the drying time of paint. And it worked fairly well, but it did take a rather long time to dry. This is fine if it is all you have on hand, but I have to admit that a glaze medium, such as this one from ColourArte, works much better and dries faster. As for making a wash of color with the powders, I highly recommend the solution from ColourArte. This will turn any of your pigment powders into a watercolor, and the consistency can be changed easily just by adjusting the amount of the solution that you add to the powders. I hope you enjoyed my project today and my little experimentation with another art medium. I just can't help myself. I guess I am a bit of a scientist at heart. In any case, I'm so glad you stopped by, and as always, comments are always appreciated, and if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. I do hope you will consider subscribing to the channel, and thanks for watching. Stay crafty, my friends.